The views and opinions expressed in these historical letters that may contain vernacular used in the World War II era, the post-war era, and the Cold War era do not reflect the views and opinions of any of the individuals involved with this project, including, but not limited to, the podcast's creators. Morning, Jamie.
Good morning, Allison.
How are you this morning?
I'm just a little bit tired. A
Yeah.
little bit tired. We went out to a show last night, and we didn't get home until like midnight, and that's very late for me. You know this. I am not. 9:00. I have a dear friend, and I'm like, I do not 9:00. Nope, don't even try calling me. He goes, "Do you turn into a pumpkin?" And so I'm like, yes. So that's my favorite. Yes, I turned into a pumpkin at 9:00. Don't call me. But we did go out last night, and we stayed out very late. So which was fun. It was a nice date night with my husband. But I'm paying for it this morning. This is like, I'm not even going to tell you what coffee cup number this is.
Yeah, this is certainly not my first cup of coffee this morning. But hey, for any of our listeners, just know we're recording this on Memorial Day weekend. So, but this is going to come out the weekend after. So, belated Happy Memorial Day to everyone, and thank you to all the service members who served our country. Of course, Sweetie's coming from that legacy of servicemen, and Lou was in the Navy, and I've always grown up with mostly the Navy, being in my immediate vicinity, especially with Willow Grove nearby. But seriously, thank you to all the servicemen and women of our armed forces. We appreciate all that you do. Heading into the storyline that we have right now. So, Jamie, we've had some interesting little tales and things going on. Sweetie's been writing poems. Of course, we had Chester being sick for a bit. That really took up the last number of episodes, and we're finally coming out of that. Sweetie's getting outside. It's spring. She's gardening. She's fighting. I don't know. She's gardening, but she's like fighting Mother Nature pretty intensely on her property, and she's going to continue to do that. But Jamie, I think it's time to catch up with some things around Doylestown. I think we need to catch up with some certain characters. Miss Darst, if we don't hear too much from her today, we will next week. Don't worry about that. But Lewis is going to school. And so we're going to hear about his first grade teacher, whom to this day he says that he really didn't like her. And I think we're going to understand why by the end of this episode. And then for our listeners next week, if you've been wondering what Elizabeth, aka Dit, and G-Mom and the kids are up to in Norristown, tune in next week, because we're going to get updates on everybody else that we haven't been hearing from for a little bit of time. So right before we head into today's content, just a general reminder, if you could please like, share, and subscribe to the Love Sweetie podcast on YouTube. If you're listening on audio platforms such as Spotify and Apple Podcasts, follow, download, whatever it is you do on those channels, leave a review. We'd appreciate all of that. And of course, check out the website at www.lovesweetiepodcast.com for more information. But Jamie, I think it's time to get into April 21st letter here and catch up with Sweetie in 1952. 363 North Main Street, Doylestown, Pennsylvania, April 21st, 1952. Dear Mama and Papa and Sister's clan, Florence's clan, Frank's clan, and Jean and Glenn, and, if the Carbons hold out, Aunt Rosanna. Oh, well, I've got so many things to do today, I can't possibly get them done. So instead of worrying which one needs doing first, I'll let them all wait till I get a letter written. Lewis is temporarily interested in a new gadget, and every time my mailman comes, I think of Mama walking up to an empty mailbox, and so the heck with the work. I have never yet known a piece of furniture to get up and dust itself, and since it won't do anything for me, Why should I knock myself out to do something for it? Louis is much better now. I must say, I think the worst of his sickness occurred before the outbreak of the rash, for he seemed to feel pretty decent since the rash did appear on last Friday morning. It first appeared then, but on Saturday it seemed much heavier. Yesterday it was all blotched together to make almost welts, and today it seems to have faded some. He hasn't had any fever to speak of since Thursday in the evening sometime, and while I've followed the procedure outlined in the Merck manual as far as I could, I'm putting him on heavier foods, as he seems to be able to take care of it all right. I'm grateful that he hasn't been any more sick with them, and feel that he has had a good dose of it, so prefer to look at it this way: a good job once done. Of course, in saying he is feeling better, you surely must realize that he needs lots of attention and entertainment, and feels that since he is sick, he is entitled to a few extra whimsies, and I guess he is, but it surely does knock a basket into my day to be his lackey boy. I guess it is worthwhile in the long run, though I'm somewhat inclined to short-sightedness in such matters. I couldn't help but get some entertainment from the whole thing myself. He looked a sight, with his face so bespectacled, and as if that weren't enough, his left front upper incisor is loose to the point of hanging in momentary jeopardy, and when he'd see me come into the room for something, he'd grin at me with that tooth, pointing a finger, and I just could not help but laugh. I know it ought to be pulled, but he says as long as he has to stay in bed with measles, that tooth is going to stay too, and so I gave up and look at it as a little extra entertainment. Every once in a while I hear it clatter on a glass, and just wonder how it managed to stay in, since it seems to hang by a thread. Well, he has to stay out of school for 10 days. I figure 10 days from the outset of the fever, on April 14th to April 24th. But since there is Schoolmen's Week, and the teachers have Thursday and Friday off, he won't go again until April 28th. That will give him ample time for a good recovery, and since I can do nothing more about it now, I'll just not worry about his schoolwork. They wouldn't let me bring his books home and work with him, as they have passed a rule governing the contamination of the books, and I can do little tutoring anyway. I've so many letters to answer and so many things to tell you, I just don't know where to start, but want to thank Uncle Glenn for his trouble in making the rings for Louis. The first one with the initials, Louis calls them Renitials. LG will fit his little finger, but the second one with his name on it will fit his ring finger. I had hoped he could wear it on his middle one, but it seems a little too tight, and so the ring finger gets it. Thank you for it, and I'll try to get him to make something special for Uncle Glenn in return. You've pleased him very much. Jean, I found your last case, the little boy, very interesting, and don't think these past few days I haven't envied the walkie-talkie instrument. I seem to have spent nearly all my time on the stair-steps either going up or coming down for something, and would not feel so badly about it, if only I could show some signs of losing some adipose tissue. I thought I'd try some exercises, as Florence did, but at the end of each day's step climbing, I haven't the gumption, and in the morning I decide I'd better save my energy for the following day's climb. Jean, I'm always glad you have a case of some kind, for my mailbox usually has a juicy morsel when you have the time to write. Just the same, I do wish you had more time in between cases to do a few more of the things you'd like. Here is something I had at first thought I wouldn't write you, and didn't for quite a while, but since Papa is sending me some fat medicine, as Louis calls it, I think I might need some advice on taking it. Okay.
And so before we get into that story, we can go back and talk about what she's done here. So the first thing that I noticed, and I just noticed this and I wanted to bring it up to you. So at the beginning of each letter, Allison will put all the people that Sweetie's writing to, and she writes their full names, and she writes like their whole names up there. So Aunt Rosanna is Sarah Rosanna. Did people just not use their first names?
Yeah, because Jean doesn't use her first name. Her first name's Velma, of course, and I can't.
Yeah, like nobody likes their name.
How many times I've seen it. So yeah, nobody's using it.
Yeah, it's just funny to me because it seems like everybody has nicknames. I mean, that's Sweetie. Yeah. That's Sweetie. Like everybody calls her Sweetie.
Lizzie is Margaret Elizabeth.
So Dit is Elizabeth's. That's Lou's sister. That's Lou's sister. Aunt Elizabeth, Aunt Dit. Dit is kind of like her alternate person. It's like her,
I
I
think
don't want
that's
to say
her true
mean.
personality.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Dit's the one who's like, we're talking about Dit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But everybody, yeah, it's just everybody has different names. It's funny to me. So first of all, Lewis is feeling better, which is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, poor thing. Like she had to go through like what Maida and Frank were going through with their kids
Mm-hmm.
with the measles, and he's also losing a tooth, which is adorable.
Mm-hmm.
My kids like my daughter, when she lost her teeth, she actually kept her baby teeth, and then her adult teeth started growing in. So like, yeah, she had her baby teeth and her adult teeth underneath it. It
Oh
was really
wow.
cute. Yeah, it's not common. It's not common. It was fun, but that reminded me of like when Lewis had his little tooth sticking out.
Yep.
So she was taking care of him. This actually is something I wanted to ask you. So the Merck manual.
Yeah.
Do you have that? What was the protocol for dealing with measles?
For dealing with measles, I can grab the Merck manual. This Merck manual is the 7th edition. So I'll drop the disclaimer later in the episode, but this is 1940 advice. So things may have changed
Yes.
a little bit since 1940. The Merck manual, I'll hold it up to the mic here, this is the 1940 edition. It's very small print, so imagine your old encyclopedias and dictionaries and things like that. But it's alphabetical. So I'm pretty sure we can go straight to measles here. Yeah, there we go. And first of all, it's about obviously about diagnosing that somebody does have the measles definitively.
Mm-hmm.
And then it goes into treatment, the general regimen. So it's about a page, but I'll go through just some things, because these were written for the doctors, but of course she has a copy because her dad's a doctor. It says bed rest from the onset of fever until 3 days after the return of normal temperature. Unless circumstances demand hospitalization, the patient is better treated at home. Conditions needed in this environment: temperature about 70 degrees Fahrenheit, fresh air in abundance, but not cold air. Bedclothes sufficient for warmth and comfort, avoiding excessive amounts. Adequate sunlight and ventilation. Custom of placing patients in darkened rooms is obsolete. So I guess that used to be a thing. This is really interesting. Yeah, that would be disturbing too. Like you have a kid with the measles, and I guess they had been doing that. Poor kids would be scared.
Do you remember Secret Garden?
Yeah.
And they kept him in that room, and he was all, and she's like, "You need sunlight." Oh
Yeah.
gosh, this is fun. Okay, so what else?
If there is marked conjunctivitis with pronounced photophobia, an eye shade or screen may be employed. Here's the diet. Should be liquid at first and restricted to skimmed or whole milk, egg and milk custards, fruit juices, gelatin jellies, malted milks, broths or strained soups. After the fever subsides, gradual transition to soft diet indicated by means of cereals, milk, and toast, coddled eggs. I love coddled eggs. And other semi-solids. Fluids should be urged, especially as fruit juices and acidulated drinks. Since cold drinks usually incite coughing, fluids should be given warm. It is essential to carefully plan the diet in order to avoid gastrointestinal upsets or attacks of diarrhea. And then it goes into some stuff about the bowels and enemas. We'll go past that.
We can skip that.
We'll skip that, but that's involved, and she's talked about this kind of stuff before.
Yeah.
Attention to the eyes. So it looks like there's going to be, it says, the routine installation of 10% solution. So it looks like there's like some eye care going on here. It says the main purpose of the treatment is the maintenance of clear passages of the eyes. So I guess, like sort of sprays and things. It goes into quite a good amount. Hot compresses, very light hot water bottle or electric pad over the chest, rubbing chest with warm camphorated oil, followed by the application of hot flannels, use of steam. So they're talking about how to deal with a cough, but then that's the general regimen. Then they go into that there's a serum therapy. And well, it actually says no definite value of serum therapy has yet been established. So like they're saying here's other possibilities, but we're not sure about it yet. Prevention of secondary infections, and treatment of complications. So it can get into all of the complications here. Yeah.
Well, what I thought was really interesting when she was saying, like, what caught my attention, is she was like, I'm, taking care of him as according to the Merck manual. I'm putting him on heavier foods. And so I was like, oh, does this mean that there was some kind of diet that was given by the Merck manual?
From the liquids
and so she deviated from it. I think that actually is really, it's neat to think about. It was that's it, but to show like sunlight, fresh air, like and to like say that that was actually something that was not done, that they didn't. That's neat.
Yeah.
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 So she's got that. So she's able to help take care of him. She's kind of like, it gives her, when you have like, okay, this is what I can do about the situation, then you feel a little bit more confident about it. She's got the instructions to, to take care of him. And then also I'm guessing the school's taking, says, hey, he's got to be out for 10 days,
Yep. This
so
one
all
takes
that.
time.
And
Yeah.
the word bespectacled.
Bespectacled. I accidentally, when I was narrating it, I thought it said bespectacled, and I was like, I had to go back and correct it. Those are two different things. He's bespectacled. He's not wearing glasses. So
that's right. That she picked that word. I love it. I love it. So she's been able to take care of him.
Yeah.
And then Uncle Glenn, and this is her referring to him as Uncle Glenn. Did you notice that?
Yep. First time, I think.
She called him Uncle Glenn. Actually did make 2 rings for Lewis. Have you found those?
I'm going to ask my dad if he still has them, because technically speaking, they're his and his possession. So he might still have them. Knowing my father, he tends to keep this sort of thing. So I'm going to find out.
I would like to know. I would like to know.
Yep.
You could ask. That would be cool.
Oh, yeah.
But that's sweet. And that she's referring to him. See, this is just, again, another affirmation that their relationship is growing and developing.
Yeah.
It's really nice. It's really nice to hear. But it does seem that she's got, she's got a little story to tell.
A couple or 3 weeks ago at night, I was sitting watching TV and noticed an irregular or skip beat in my pulse. I thought it was probably my imagination, but when a night or 2 later it seemed more pronounced, I stopped and counted it as carefully as I could, and became fearful that something was dreadfully wrong. I asked Lou to count, and he said he thought he found it too. Well, I let it go a day or 2 longer, but once being aware of it, it seemed to grow, probably the psychological effect. But just in case, I went over to the Valley Forge General Hospital. It is as much Army as the U.S. Naval Hospital is Navy. It was clear round over behind Robinson's barn, which sits smack dab in the middle of Hell's Half Acre. I don't know yet, but what I'd have been just as well off to go down to the Naval Hospital. But anyway, I went. Described it to the doctor as best I could, and could only describe it this way. It seemed to beat along at regular intervals, and at a reasonable rate for, say, 16 to 27 beats, then halt longer than I thought it should, and then resume beating with an extra hard beat, which was what I felt, and first woke me to it. Well, they gave me a good examination, and said it was an extra systolics, nothing to worry about. He asked me for any past history, and of course I could give him none. I mentioned the diet I am on, and also that I'd been drinking more coffee than usual, and that I was doing more outside work than usual. He said the coffee might be causing it, and I'm about agreed it was, for with cutting it out, I haven't been aware of the trouble very much. The peculiar part was that I'd been doing lots more heavy work, and hadn't noticed it at the time, but in the evenings when it was quiet, or when I'd just gone to bed, it would be most noticeable. He didn't even refer me to the heart specialist, which in itself was a good indication, I thought, as they are quite careful. Well, now you've sent me some fat medicine that I'd like to take to help me lose some weight, but wonder if it would be advisable, and so I'm going to hold it until I hear from you. I might say I told him about the diet and what I was eating. He said it was perfectly all right to diet, if I'd cut out some of the coffee, and said he rather thought it would be a good idea if I did lose some weight. See, I'm fatter than you thought. I confess I worried quite a bit about it, and that isn't good. In fact, I believe the worrying was probably more than half of the trouble, for as I said, I made myself relax on that, and seemed to improve with 5 or 6 cups a day, where I used to drink only 1 or 2, and believe I can tie in the irregular beat with the time I started drinking the extra coffee. I shall wait till I hear from you about the fat medicine before I start taking it, and also I shall be interested to hear what you have to say about the above. I suspect I could get an EKG if I insisted on it, without charge, through either the Army or Navy, but wouldn't care to do so, if it isn't necessary. When he examined me and let me go without referring me to the heart specialist, I felt I wouldn't press it further. What do you say? You should not be alarmed. It has almost stopped entirely, and I've been feeling better in the past few months, with more energy and more desire to work than I ever have, for the past winter, anyway. I'm not worrying any more, and therefore am improving.
Nope.
Poor sweetie.
Nope. Coffee's fine. Coffee's good for you.
Coffee extends your life and it makes you happier.
Exactly. Espresso's really good for you, so I refuse to take this medical advice.
Well, I think she's right, though. 5 to 6 cups of coffee a day. But it did make me think of like when they had to ration coffee.
I was just thinking the same thing, and I'm going to put that bonus episode name on the screen right here. Where has the coffee gone? Remember when they rationed coffee during World War II, right at Thanksgiving? Because this is why I hate the government.
They took away the coffee, Allison. She's still, I mean, like, I'm still, with COVID, you couldn't go to shows and stuff.
Right.
I'm still suffering from that. I'm still like in awe that we're able to just go to shows and stuff.
Right.
And it's like now I think maybe she's just like, I have coffee. I need, when was that? That was like back in 40. So 39 was when the war started.
42, I want to say.
It was in 42.
Yeah.
So it was 10 years ago. According to, because 10 years in this
timeline. Yeah, it was 10
years. Timeline. It was 10 years ago. So I wonder if she still remembered that. Did that have an impact on her? We do know that the Depression affected a whole generation of people.
Yep. Hers,
and cause them to be like more frugal and to be more like, and to be like, wanting to keep stuff and not throw anything away. Everything's useful. So I think she probably had some kind of after effects from not being able to drink as much coffee as she wanted to.
I wonder, that brings up another subject then. When she's going to these sales and she's picking up the canned goods for so cheap, and she says, she's doing it to offset her grocery bill, but canned goods keep for a long time. I wonder if she's also kind of, even if she's not consciously doing it because she was a child during the Depression and because she's been through rationing with the war. And we have to remember, we haven't mentioned it in a while because it's basically at a stalemate, but the Korean War is going on currently at the time that this is all happening. And I wonder if she's just like instinctively being like, well, even if we don't use a lot of it this year, it's going to be around for a while. And then in my cave, I'm going to have this supply of all these other things. So
I'm sure she has that mindset. And I'm sure she does. But she's willing to accept that the coffee might be doing this. And she's also like this medicine that, it's probably, what do you think? It's Dex? Do you think it's Dexedrine?
It's the Dexedrine. It's Dexy. Yeah.
Okay. Because now she started calling it fat medicine. So that's fun. But she's also like thinking, oh, maybe this would not be good to take. And being considerate of that kind of stuff. And, so that's good. That's good that she's not like, oh, I'll just do it.
Just like whatever. Yeah.
She's in a much better mood. She's in a better place. She's safe. So, and also it was just the winter. The way that she talks about herself and then the way that the doctor talks about her, to like agree with her that way, it just seems to me like it just doesn't. Back then, what was it? Tact?
Yeah.
Tact, it was not something that was ingrained in society. It was like, oh yeah, you should lose some weight. You think you need to? Okay, yeah, go. Yeah. I was like, well, did she really? Did she really?
Yeah, we've seen pictures of her and it's like, what are you talking about, sweetie?
But then of course you look at there's ads and the doctors are like, 9 out of 10 doctors say these cigarettes are great for you to smoke when you're pregnant. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah. Same time period. And it's also interesting. I was thinking about her later history. So I don't know if it's just what the percentage of people that go through this, but she did have a pacemaker put in later in life, somewhere around, I think, late 70s, early 80s. So, and I know that's like not an unusual procedure for a lot of people who are older. But I do wonder if that's stemming from whatever this really old little heart flutter or whatever it is, what the unusual beat is coming back from when she was in her 30s. If that led to eventually in the 70s that there was something going on where she needed the pacemaker. So, yeah.
That is, we didn't know that. That's kind of strange. It'll be interesting to see in the letters because you haven't read all the letters either yet.
Oh, no. There's way too many letters. It lets me continue to discover things my grandmother did and makes me feel that my life pales in comparison with all of her adventures. So.
Oh, my goodness. Please don't. That's actually one of my biggest flexes is that my husband will talk about things and he'll say in awe, he'll say, I've done so much stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like not having any regrets.
Yeah, that's the big thing, is not having the regrets. Like,
yeah.
Jamie knows I was talking to her before this episode started that I was like, I think I might head to Maryland despite some light rain today. But then I was just thinking the letter that I'm reading from 1954, and we will get into it, is like a random trip. So she does get to go places, a little more frequently. And they're like fighting like a winter storm and rain like throughout the entirety of the South for like 10 hours of driving. And I'm like, why am I scared of a little rain here? And I was like, is that the message coming through to me that I happen to be looking at this letter, this morning and saying, Allison, you can do this. Like, what are you doing? Like, their cars, they were not a Subaru. Okay. Like,
That's another thing.
all-wheel
You have a
drive.
Subaru.
What have you even thinking? Go see your cousin. Like, that's it.
I think you've decided. This is funny. You were like, oh, you were kind of on the fence about it, but I think that maybe, sweetie,
maybe now,
sweetie,
like, I'm internalizing like that and being like, no regrets. Hashtag no regrets. That's what we're gonna go with. Right?
You have to tell your cousin I said hello when you go see him today.
Yeah.
This is another thing, sweetie. It's amazing. Like, Sweetie was a little regretful. I mean, if you go back to the first episode, you can see that. But the fact that she did so much good in her life, it must have reverberated. And now look, she's doing good and she's not here anymore. Like, think about that.
Yeah, she worried. That's always the part that gets me. I keep that letter. I have it right here. It's always in my desk drawer. It's a constant reminder, is her last letter. I'll bring it up on the screen. And one of the things that is tough about this letter, I can tell you, there were excerpts of it played in episode 0. Let me grab a glove here.
I love it when she breaks out the gloves.
Right? Yeah. It's from 2009. This is probably not necessary, but I'm sorry, not 2009, 2007, actually. And I'll put a copy of it on the screen so we can see it. But you can see from here, her handwriting is suffering. She had Parkinson's at the end. But it's that one line she says. She's writing it to Jean because it's Jean's birthday. And I think she just wanted to get something, even though she had been writing by hand. She wanted to write something to Jean. And she says, sometimes it seems I'm staring at my own mortality, which makes me wish I'd lived my life not as I did, but as I should have. And that's the regret line. And then later she's talking about how sister had passed away a little before her, because Sweetie and Jean at the time period of this letter, they're the last two remaining, and then Jean actually survives the longest, even though Jean was older. She writes, I'm beginning to feel like sister did about the time she died. Maybe they won't open the gate and let me in. Those two lines together, where there's this regret that she didn't do enough, that she should have done XYZ. Hashtag no regrets, but I keep that there. And this podcast, and I've written this in many places, and I've been working on that big text, Jamie, that we haven't revealed to the channel yet, and we won't reveal today. A lot of this podcast is to prove her wrong. She lived her life to the fullest. And the fact that she worried at the end, I'm sure it's a common worry of like a lot of people. But yeah, it's like the reverberating, nope, sweetie, you're fine.
Well, you just did it. I've only known you for a short while of your life, but I already know that you've made a huge impact and you've done so much more than you realize. So
I think we all.
I like seeing this juxtaposition, like seeing like you and Sweetie going through the same thing.
Yeah.
But I think we have waxed poetic enough. Yeah. Perhaps we should go so that people are like, there's more letter. There's just a little bit. Actually, no, there's a lot more to go because it's Sweetie.
Before I forget it, I had Lou take down to the base to mail a package for Sister's kids, Florence's kids, and Frank's kids. I don't think their service is any too fast down there. Those guys are in for the duration, But you can look for them in a few days. I sent them each a big Easter egg that I meant to send earlier and didn't get it done. I also sent Sister those shoes I've been stepping over and around and hope she can wear them. If she can't, Mama, you give them to some deserving patron who can. I'd have sent you each one, Mama and Papa and Jean and Glenn, but just didn't. Even bought some Easter cards to send to all of you, and they got laid down on the sewing machine and Mama lost them. Well, you'll get them next year, so just bide your time. Since they were so late, the eggs that is, I wrote a little poem of apology to send and soften the insult. Incidentally, I have another little gem to enclose with this letter. Do you enjoy them, or am I just frittering my time for nothing? Louis and I both like this one, and we hope you will too. Write about it. It would probably be more acceptable to the Saturday Evening Post, and what's more, it is generally true throughout. I hope you like it. We do. Also, I happened to the card shop and bought Mama some cards for her to send to her secret pal, and shall get them sent off, too, perhaps today. I hope you find them usable. That is, and if you write and tell me what you want, I'll try to find a greater variety for you. I'm usually in a hurry, and so grab several, and hope you can use them, either now or later. I have a whole stack of Jean's and Papa's letters to answer, and that is going to be something of a job, but I'd best take 1 or 2 of them right now, and go through and answer, and make comments on some, and perhaps take another sachet tomorrow, or the next day. I hope you won't feel I was unappreciative of the money you sent for Louis and the little egg-laying hen. I was at that moment tied up with the first stages of the measles, and just couldn't get to it. But surely you got my message via mental telepathy. I did thank you for it anyway. I shall return Aunt Rosanna's letter to Sister with this one. If I don't, it will go the way of the Easter cards. I enjoyed reading it, but wish I could get some answers to some of the questions I asked. How is Olive? And who's Teresa? Oh, come on, kids. I'd like to know. I hope Frank will be able to come and visit with you for a while. His kids should either be pretty well over their sieges of diseases, or else have everybody exposed, so it won't matter. I don't hear from Frank and Maida very often. I can sympathize with Maida having 3 kids sick at once and being sick herself. That is a problem, but I don't often hear from Frank either. Florence, you'd better write and tell me what condition that egg arrives in, or, I'm giving you fair warning, I'll strip your carbon out of the pile. That is my severest punishment. Be sure to write me of Frank's visit. I wish I could follow your last little suggestion of dropping in any time. No overcrowding. That would be wonderful. Papa, don't worry about the poem about the looking glass. It wasn't any good anyway, and I'm not particular whether I get it back or not. I just hope you like this one. Louis decided the other day he wanted to write one and ordered me to sit down and take it as he gave forth. It was about his teddy bear, who was taking a good mauling at the moment, and after we got it written down, I tried to point out that it didn't rhyme, and couldn't he do something about it? Apparently I didn't get the idea across, or else he was provoked with such a trifling problem, for he said, "You rhyme it when you type it up for me." And so I did. I shall send it in the next letter as additional entertainment, and besides, I guess this letter will be heavy enough. I hope you are taking care of yourselves. I know how much you want to get out and work, especially with the coming of warmer weather, and the heads of your plants coming up will further incite your enthusiasm. But you must be careful not to overtire yourself. After the flare-up of the irregular heartbeat, I found more and more I was worrying about both of you. Hope you do get another rose from Earl May. If it is as badly beaten up as you say, I think you ought to. I've about come to the conclusion that if you go about it right, you can get almost anything you start out to get. Knowing how and the finesse to get it over is the trick, and it is surely worth cultivating. Pardon my bit of philosophy. If I could practice as well as I preach, I'd be far wealthier, I'm sure. Incidentally, I'm going to write and get a 1952 seed catalog from Henry Field. I'm terribly disappointed in these daffodils, and though they inspired the poem, I'm not going to bother with them. I bought some King Alfred jonquils from Henry Field. Pardon, they were a gift from you, and they were truly beautiful down at the other house, and I just can't see them as being worthy of ground room. I'm going to give them the working end of the spading fork like I did those tiger lilies, and really have some nice ones set out this fall. I like Henry's, and so I'm going to write for his book. I've been meaning to make mention of the S you often decorate when you write, dear sweetie. I couldn't quite decide how come one sprouted eyebrows, but shall wait and see what the next one is.
That makes me so sad that we don't have those letters.
Yeah.
Because we have the Love Sweetie podcast. Wouldn't it be awesome if we could have the Dear Sweetie podcast?
Oh, yeah. We will have it at some point. It doesn't hit until the 60s or 70s, but there's a few years there where we have pretty continuous correspondence from Jean. So we do have the dialogue back and forth, which means all the dirt in Des Moines, no doubt, of what's going on. So for Iowa listeners, it's a long ways off, but if you want some dirt for Des Moines, I'm sure it is there with Jean's sense of humor. But yeah, I wonder who did it. Yeah, the design on the S.
Yeah, that like to get to see that, to get to see like what those sounds so cute.
Well, I wanted to talk about the carbons just for the time. It's been a while since we discussed this, but there might be newer listeners who are like, what is she talking about, jerking the carbons and things like that? Because this isn't something that's talked about these days. But she starts her letter, she's talking about the carbons. Then she's talking about the weight of the letter. And she's like, maybe I'll put the poem in the next one, the poem about the teddy bear. And then she's got this dig at Florence that's like, that's my severest punishment. What she's saying is, you're going to stop getting letters from me if you don't start writing back. And the carbon paper is, of course, like, when you go and fill out and you get like a little receipt because the two papers are pressed together. She's typing these to a typewriter, and there's like 4 papers in one. So it's impressing all the way through. And so she's able to make these family circulars. That's why they're addressed to so many people, because she types it up one time and it splits off between 4. So when she's saying to Florence, I'm going to jerk your carbon out of the pile, you're not going to get one of the circulars from the carbons. And the reason they're using this is to keep the weight of the postage down. So she says the letter is going to get now too heavy because it's a longer one. So I'll put it in the next one. But yeah, so weight of the mail mattered back then. Now it's we can text message and email for free. So
yeah, which is so. And when you have that immediate gratification, doesn't that kind of devalue?
Yep.
It just, for me, that's really what it does. It's just like, it's almost like you take it for granted.
Yep.
Yeah, she spends so much time writing. Like, and I'm so grateful that she did, because that's how we have everything. We have all these things that, she might have forgotten.
Well, speaking of that gratification concept, do you know who has one of the largest, if not the largest, collection of typewriters in the world?
Tom Hanks.
Tom Hanks. And Tom Hanks does all of his correspondence by typewriter. He does not do emails and all this other stuff. It's really, really well known that if he receives a message out, because he wants to absolutely be thorough in what he's writing. There's an art form to slowing down the mind, that you get all these complete thoughts out. And Tom Hanks does that. It's very famous that he does. There was a documentary about it too, I think, called California Typewriter, if people want to see his collection and check out that.
Well, I actually just read something not too long ago about this, is that there's actually a study that shows that when you write with your hands, you're actually engaging parts of your brain that you don't engage when you're typing.
Interesting.
Yes. So I'm not trying to say like that she's incredibly smart. Like, these letters, like, think about like this and like what a typical person would have written. Like, she's very thorough. She's her father's daughter, 100%. But by slowing down, like you said, and by like having to write something, so you're physically doing something, so your mind is having to do that, and then you're also thinking of the words. So we're losing things. We're losing the ability to like hone our minds and to become, more intelligent, I think, because of like being able to just type. And you don't even have to type. You get your phone out and you say blah, 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 and it types it for you.
Yeah.
I know that's that baseline, especially like for my kids and these younger generations, is, but for me and for you, I was on the side of the road one time. I didn't have a cell phone. 2:00 in the morning, my car broke down on the highway. And like I had to stay there all night. Nobody stopped, and I had to walk in the morning because I didn't have a cell phone, because that wasn't a thing that people did. Not everybody had a cell phone. Yeah. So I don't know I don't even know where I was going with this. I'm sorry.
No, I mean, it's interesting. A lot of people have asked me when I talk about the size of the collection and how this podcast is produced, how the letters appear on the screen, because quite frankly, the only reason that I do the typed up version with like the dots and things like that is sometimes the ink is extremely faint. Sometimes it's hard to see the old letters. They're much smaller. If I tried to put it on the screen, it would look like even more of a wall of text than it is. But a lot of people ask me, they say, why don't you just scan in the letters? Because there's something about rushing through that would happen if I scan in the letters. So for our newer listeners and for those that missed it before, these letters are manually retyped by myself to get to the point that they're at. So when I say I'm working on 1954 and they're just like, well, she should be a little further ahead. You see these mega letters, they take some time. I'm pretty fast. My max speed is about 120 words a minute. But when we're talking about walls of text and all of the stuff that we're looking at, it takes time. Like one of these letters to transcribe, this one in particular, great example. This one's probably going to take an hour and a half for me to go through. But I'm really there's like an active thinking process when you're forced to retype it. And it has me check vocabulary, slow down and check, like adipose. I don't use that in everyday speak when she's talking about things.
No,
I
that's
have to look
true.
it up. So it forces
Yeah.
me to check those words as I go along. And I'm like, and I still catch things now after I listen back to the narration of the thing I typed. So I've looked at these letters like 4 or 5 times before I even get to the narration of it. But I don't think I'd have that if I'd just scanned them in and sort of read them, because you can get tired while reading. We get a wall of text like that and your mind can wander. It can't if you're physically doing something. So that might,
yeah, you are definitely
writing.
The method that we have got going for the podcast.
Yeah.
Even now, like you said, you will be listening to it and you'll pick up on things that you didn't know. And how many times have you handled that letter? So yes, the world is too fast today.
Yep.
The world is too fast today. And so maybe something like, maybe that's what this podcast is mostly for me, is like just trying to put the brakes on things.
Yeah.
Trying to put the brakes on things and make people slow down a little bit and just be present. Yeah. I really like that. This is definitely, we're getting really introspective. Like we're digging into stuff today. I hope I don't cry.
So we do have one more part of this letter to get through. And then we're into something that I don't think is going to be tearful.
Oh, yes. Elizabeth and Bob and Mr. Brown left for their 2 weeks in Florida on Sunday morning at 5 a.m. Poor G-Mom is left with the care of those 3 babies. Remember, Bobby is the oldest. I had thought she might loan me one of them, but she's too much a worrywart to let them out of her sight. I can't go over there to help either, since Louis has the measles. We unwittingly exposed all 3 of them on Monday when we went over to exchange Easter baskets, and wouldn't it be a picnic if they all get sick with the measles while Elizabeth was gone? I wouldn't have done it on purpose. I didn't know he was even close to the measles or anything else for that matter until we started over on Monday afternoon. Isn't it fun to go into Des Moines and meet somebody you know, like you found Mush and Sister and Dee? I often wish I could see somebody on the street downtown that looked familiar. It is a rather lonesome feeling to go and run errands and never bump into people you've known for some time. They say if you stand in Times Square in New York, sooner or later you'll see the world pass, and consequently your friends and familiar people. But I guess they never come to Doylestown or Philadelphia. I never see any of them. Your pictures of Mush in her red hat and veil wasn't exactly flattering, but quite funny to me anyway. I wish I could have seen her. I found the article you clipped from the newspaper interesting, but didn't recognize the Gilbert Gunther who was concerned. Should I? I must hand it to him for working until he did achieve the full section of land. Feel he probably has worked hard enough to deserve it. But boy, won't he work now. I wonder if Genevieve Mitchell-Patterbaugh got paid for her endorsement of Fleischmann's dry yeast. She surely has a nice-looking little boy, hasn't she? Jean sent me the article when they interviewed her right after the state fair when she won the blue ribbon. No doubt she is enjoying her publicity, and I couldn't blame her either. I made a proposition with the man next door, who doesn't have near the spare ground room we have, and asked if he'd like to use part of our ground and help me pay the cost of plowing up our ground, so we could each have a garden. He agreed, even cut down one old mulberry tree that was making a nuisance of itself, and contacted the man to come and plow. He did a nice job, plowed, disked, and dragged it, and yesterday, even though it was Sunday, I begged out of the house long enough to plant some onions, peas, radishes, carrots, beets. I was going to plant Sister's lettuce, some spinach, and some broccoli, but time ran out on me, and Louis was demanding so much. Right then I had to stop. Then we did some more work outside in the yard, and this morning I found mussels I didn't know I had, until they started hurting this morning. Perhaps this evening I can talk Louis into giving me a few minutes off and go get them in. I hate to admit I didn't know rose moss was called portulaca, but let's face it, I didn't know it by any other name. Lou is helping me fix the bed, and be the good Lord willin', they'll all be planted tomorrow night. The cave is extra large, So I went and bought an extra pack of seed, just in case. You know me, if 1 pack is good, 3 will be fine. I must stop now. I'll have 5 sheets to go in the envelopes, as is. I'll save the rest of these letters and questions and try to answer them in another letter in a day or 2. However, this will explain my delay in writing and bring you partway up to date, even though there are many questions to be answered. Right, everybody? Love, Sweetie.
All right.
So she got stuff planted. I'm so proud of her.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's about the time. April. So when was this letter?
April 21st. Yeah.
April 21st. This was a good time for her to get that the radishes. I have radishes and beets, or I didn't do beets this year yet. But I did radishes, I did lettuce, peas is good, all that stuff, like, and that's all great. Those are all great cold weather crops. Oh, I'm so excited for her.
It's cold weather for spinach and lettuce, and sort of like early spring and fall is a good
Yes.
time for that, right? Yeah.
Yes, very good, Allison.
Know
You
that
get a gold
much,
star.
yeah.
You
Yeah.
get a gold star. You can.
Mhm.
It's nice in our zone, which I think we actually looked, and that Chester and Laura are actually in the
Right.
same zone. It's
Mhm.
6.
Okay.
And you can do a spring garden and you can do a fall garden in the same crops, which is really cool. The radishes actually, I'm fermenting some right now. I had a really good radish crop this year. I was very excited about it. And I've been pulling lettuce out for the past 2 weeks. It's great. It's great.
Yeah.
So this is all fun. This all makes me, I just love gardening. So
Yeah.
So we learned that she was gifted a trip to this
Mhm.
newspaper man's convention.
Yeah. The Newspaper Man's Convention in Florida, which of course, Mr. Brown and her husband Bob Brown are both distributors, so they're expected to be there. But 2-week trip to Florida for Dit.
2 weeks without the kids.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that she just, like, she doesn't take them anywhere.
No, not at this point. Mm-mm.
And so G-Mom Graham, we did learn too, is also doing radium treatments for the cancer in her cheek.
Yep.
She's 70 something years old.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Dit's leaving the kids. And let's remind everybody, Bobby's the oldest. He's 3 at this time. He's about 3 years old. Little Marguerite is what, like 1.5, 2, maybe? And then there's a baby. So small kids who are going to be running around that you have to keep an eye on. Sydney, G-Mom Graham, in her 70s. Nope.
Mm-mm.
But it's just going to be like, well, gotta go to Florida. We're going to pick up this story in next week's episode. And we're going to get the full rundown of just how much work G-Mom Graham had to go through because Dit decided to go to Florida.
For 2 weeks. All right. You know what's kind of cool too is that she talked about Fleischmann's dry yeast.
Mm-hmm.
I actually have some in my fridge right now.
Nice.
Isn't that funny when we talk about companies that like were around then that are still around today?
Mm-hmm.
Was it Morton Salt? Wasn't there like a big salt?
Yep, that was in Kansas. We were talking about all the salt production there when they were in Kansas. But with the Fleischmann's, that's probably, I'm guessing if there was a state fair and there was a baking competition. So I'm envisioning this like woman with like a cherry pie and being like the poster child for yeast being advertised because everyone's baking back then. For whatever reason, I'm like cherry pie. I don't know why. It could have been anything. Maybe I'll find the
State
article.
Fair, cherry pie. That just sounds perfect.
Yeah. And Iowa State Fair to this day, I think that's the biggest state fair in the country.
It's one of the
They're
ones
known
that,
for it.
it's like a very famous.
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, Ohio State has a really good, I know that they have a state fair that's pretty big too.
Yeah.
And of course, like when you have like a large agricultural, and you got like 4-H and, you know, those organizations, Future Farmers of America and those kind of organizations, you have like larger.
I remember driving to Iowa, though. It was funny when we drove to Des Moines because my dad and we took Route 80 across Pennsylvania. So we were up north. And there's farms in Pennsylvania. And I was I like driving by the farms until you get into the mountainous areas. And you're like, we have some pretty nice farms. And then we drove across central Ohio. And I was like, okay, these farms are a bit more serious, it would seem, than Pennsylvania, a little bigger. And then we're driving through Indiana. And I was like, whoa, the farms are getting bigger in Indiana compared to Ohio. Then you go across that central band of Illinois. And it's like, Okay, this is the home of John Deere. So we're starting, like, you could tell because the houses were getting further and further and further back from the road. And they were starting to get more in like the distance that when you're like, wow, these are big properties and the grain silos. Then we crossed the Mississippi River, and Iowa was like, hold my beer. So it's an interesting observation as you go across. Once you're over that Mississippi River, game over. I mean, it's just in the distance. It's not as flat as everybody thinks it is. It's very hilly in Iowa, but man, the fields out there. So I'm glad they still have a giant state fair. I hope to get to see it one day. I think it's about a week long. Definitely want to go to Iowa when that's going on. But I'm sure I'll have some really good cherry pie then. But yeah.
But we have another letter for today, the second letter for today.
Yep.
Now you had to do a little bit of a detective work because this didn't have any of that stuff, but you placed it right around this time period.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with you. I really think it fits in here.
Yep.
But this, oh man, Allison, I don't even have anything to say.
Let's begin.
About the only title I could think of for this little anecdote would be, I've been spoiling for a fight, or meet me outside, I'll knock your head off. I hate to go into such long, drawn-out detail like he said, and I said, and yet I've about got to, so you'll get a lucid picture of just what the groundwork has been, and how it finally ends. I have had the feeling for some time that Lewis's teacher, Mrs. Houck, has been a little too inclined to pick at Lewis and give him the blame and subsequently the punishment for most of the disturbances that went on at school. For his sake, and also to avoid being tagged as a troublemaker, I have been a little reticent about going to school over minor skirmishes, for I felt she would take it out on him, the resentment she undoubtedly has felt towards me. And so there have been a number of little items that I have tried to smooth over and ignore, though I confess on one particular incident I have suffered from a conscience that told me I had done Lewis an injustice to keep my mouth shut. Until now, that is, now I've about convinced myself that all things come to those who wait. He who laughs last has a right to a real guffaw, and since you've done wrong, you'd better be careful in the future, lest you walk around with legs henceforth. To celebrate the opening of school, I took Lewis and bought him a pair of new shoes at a store where they usually give some gift to their kid buyers. This time the gift was a small pencil box containing a pencil or two, a ruler, a protractor, and an eraser. He took it proudly to school with him. Several days later came home and told me that a little girl had borrowed the eraser, and when he asked for it back, she told him, no, it was hers, and she wouldn't give it back. I glossed over it as being something rather trivial, and some time later bought him another eraser, bigger, and this time I carefully dug his initials into it. Somebody borrowed it, and when he asked for it back, the kid tore it in half before he returned it. I was sore about it, but warned him not to be too generous and take the small end of the stick for his troubles. But I didn't go to school over it either. Then, some time later, he came home and told me he had gotten into trouble at school over some crayons. I tried to get the full story, and here is how it is, at least as closely as I could get it. A little girl who sits next to him had gotten a new box of crayons for Christmas, I think. She brought them to school, and in finding a place for them in her desk, or perhaps in her pencil box, she decided she didn't want the old and broken ones, told Lewis to open up his box and just upended her pencil box into his, and told him he could have the crayons as they were old and broken, and she had new ones and didn't want them any longer. Lewis took them, and I guess he used them for several days before she came back and asked for all of them. Lewis said no. She'd given them to him, and he didn't have to give them back. Whereupon the little girl called the teacher and told Mrs. Houck that Lewis had taken her crayons out of her desk and wouldn't give them back. Lewis tried to tell Mrs. Houck how it happened, but she cut him off, made him give the crayons back, and after shaking her finger in his face, she said she didn't want to hear one more word about it. So Lewis shut up. He came home and told me about it, and I thought right then I'd better go and see just what was what. But I'd been there to see her not very long before, and you remember I asked her if she might not be anticipating trouble from Lewis before it actually happened. She got most indignant, as she has been teaching school more years than I've lived, and let me know she didn't like Mother's interfering with her methods of teaching. Being pretty thoroughly told to shut up, I didn't like to risk further antagonism on this score. And if you look at it this way, Lewis had been in trouble before. The little girl apparently hadn't, and wasn't it reasonable to suppose Mrs. Houck would say, well, Ruthie hasn't been in trouble before, and Lewis has, and so I think her word is better than Lewis's. I had Lewis's word, and I firmly believed it, but how was I going to convince her? So I didn't go. But as I said before, I felt guilty for selling him short, until this week.
Homeschool your kids. I just want to point out that the girl lied and was validated. So this already is laying a framework that lying and being deceitful will get you what you want. That just is laying the framework, because Lewis was, and I truly believe, because there's two sides to every story. Oh, there's three sides to every story. There's his side, her side, and the truth. Everybody has a different perspective, so you do have to take that into consideration. But I've had teachers like this before, and this little girl took advantage of that, and she lied. And also the turning of the other cheek when your things and your property is stolen. You know how we feel about that as libertarians. So this really, really upsets me. And again, I'm like, well, this is why I homeschool my kids.
Yeah, I mean, Lewis is not having a good experience of the first year at school with Mrs. Houck in the classroom. He's also up against the fact that most of these kids grew up together. I mean, they're all about 6 or 7, but they've known each other probably most of their lives. He's attending right now the Doylestown Public School, which is, I'll put a picture of it up on the screen. This famously burnt down. It was the Milton Bean architecture, one of the most beautiful schoolhouses in the state. But it did burn down in 1973, so it's not there anymore. But that's what he's attending. And it's just unfortunate that he's such a giving person. He is to this day. He's very, very generous with everything. And he gets it from his mother. Sweetie's very generous with everybody and with her time, and very diplomatic with so many things. He is mimicking his mom in large part here. And he's, as she said, getting the short end of the stick for it. And she's just like, well, if I just create problems, is that just going to make it more difficult for him in school? Like, he really needs to learn. So she's trying to find that balance. But what we're going to get into here now, Jamie, is things get a little too far with the next occurrence. And that title that Sweetie gave to this, I'm spoiling for a fight, or meet me outside, I'll knock your head off. Sweetie's had enough at this point.
Well, now to go back to April 10th, which was the last day of school before their Easter vacation. For some reason, I must have been in a big hurry, and along with that, they had sent out a bulletin that they were raising the price of the school lunch platters, the price of milk, and the price of ice cream, and since we were late that morning, I put extra money into his billfold and warned him to be careful of the change. I knew how much I had put in, and guessing at the raised prices, I had a good idea of how much he should be able to bring back. Well, Sally was out with measles, and they'd had their Easter party, and Mrs. Houck asked Lewis if he could deliver Sally's Easter basket, and that, along with the fact that his vacation he had so eagerly waited for was beginning, he forgot his billfold and left it in his desk. I didn't worry too much about it, as the room is carefully locked by the teacher when she leaves, and it seemed reasonably safe. Well, it stayed there from the 10th of April till the 16th of April, when school begun, and Lewis could have brought it home, but he got the measles, you remember, and didn't go back until Tuesday of this week. He found his billfold, opened it, and found the quarter. The seats are close, and so the little girls next to him looked in and saw it, and promptly started in on him. "Give it to me," says she. "Now," Lewis said, "my mother said I had to bring the change home, and you can't have it." "Oh," she said, "I will to get it, or I'll tell Mrs. Houck it was mine, and you took it from me, like I did the crayons." Lewis held out until she put her hand up, waving for attention, and then he got scared and gave it to her. She went and bought 2 pretzels for $1 apiece, and pocketed the rest of the change. When Lewis came home at noon and told me, the roof really went off of 363 North Main. I said, why didn't you let her tell the teacher it was hers, and then tell Mrs. Houck it was yours, and you'd left it there over vacation. And when he said, well, Mama, I told Mrs. Houck the truth about the crayons, and she wouldn't believe me. I thought she'd not believe me this time either, and I'd have to give up the money anyway, so why not give it to her before she called me a liar again? He had a good point then, and so I steamed up to school. Actually, there's no other word but steamed to apply to that, for all my resentment against Mrs. Houck and that same kid who had swiped one eraser, broken the next, lied about the crayons, and gotten him into trouble a good many other times too, just boomed to the top. And if she'd given me any argument, I'd have gone to the superintendent. I was so hot under the collar. I wouldn't have stopped for anything. I went back to school with Louis, and had him point out on the playground the little witch who had blackmailed him, and then without any preamble just walked up and said, I wonder if you'd give me the rest of the change you got from Louis this morning. She paled and said, Yes, it is in my desk. And when I said, Let's go get it, she turned to run like a scared mouse, but towards the schoolhouse, and I caught up with her and said, You told Louis you were going to tell Mrs. Houck the money was yours, didn't you, when Louis said you couldn't have it? She said, Well, I didn't tell her that yet. And I said, No, you didn't have to, because Louis gave it to you. Isn't that right? But you said you were going to tell her, so he'd give you the money, didn't you? And she said, Yes. I said, Let's go and get it. And she went to her desk and got me 3 pennies and 2 dimes. And then I started in on Mrs. Houck. Have you ever seen a dog growl over a bone? I did. I'd give her a chance to say something, and then I just let her have it. I said I thought it was time she knew just how things had been going, told her about the first eraser that she wouldn't return, about the second new one that had been ruined before she gave it up, and about the money. And she sort of stammered and said I'd have never believed it. She comes from such a good Christian family. I said, Well, and left it there, and she got the intimation that I understood. She thought we weren't such good Christians. She even blushed a little over that. But I've got to give her credit. Her years of teaching have taught her that if she talks fast, she isn't so likely to have to listen to so much. She said when I told her about the money, Well, Louis didn't say anything to me about it. And that was where she made her big mistake, for I really turned the hose loose on her then. I sat up straight and said, Well, why should he, Mrs. Houck? He told you he didn't swipe those crayons. You remember the incident shortly after Christmas, and you took Ruthie's word over his. I give him credit for using his head and deciding it was easier to stand the loss of the quarter than to tell you and stand the humiliation of being called a liar, and forfeiting the quarter besides. I've known all along that Louis didn't swipe those crayons. He had no reason to. He has had crayons at home all along, has brought them to school a time or two, and you've seen them here, haven't you? She said yes, she had, and then I told her I thought she was a little too quick to put the blame on him for the crayon trouble. I hadn't a doubt in my mind that Louis had told her the absolute truth over that she had preferred to take Ruthie's word over his. Well, now she couldn't, and I had proof and admission from the girl herself. I shook the change in her face and said, Well, I'm only out 2 pennies, but I'd gladly forget the entire quarter just to give you a clear picture of just how the situation stands. Louis isn't a liar. He'd have no reason to swipe crayons when he has plenty of his own. But you can't blame him for taking this way out and saving some unjustified punishment. I paused for breath, and she cut in and said she was glad I'd called it to her attention. She'd keep Ruthie and get it straightened up, and she'd also see that Ruthie got 2 cents to make up for what she spent. I said, Oh, well, that isn't so important, as long as you see where the trouble starts, but you can handle it as you choose. For once, I couldn't look back and say, Well, I should have said this, or why didn't I think to tell her this? I was so hot. I said everything and made no bones about it. She thanked me, vowed she'd cooperate with me, and under my breath, I thought she'd damned well better, or she'll hear from me again. She bowed me out, and for once I felt I'd held and really used to its best advantage the whip hand, and if I stung her a time or two with it, it was purely intentional. It is time for Louis to come home for lunch, and time to get it ready, so I must stop. I do not send this with all the rest of the letters, but to some of you who might be interested. Write me what you think of it, or at least write. Love to all, Sweetie and the clan.
Mm-hmm.
I have a feeling that it was a little bit more intense than you could get across in a letter.
Yeah.
But there's 2 pet peeves. Just the two. Liars and people who waste my time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think, being a liar is it's incredibly, like, to be a liar, to be somebody who lies, which is what this little girl did. And she did it with no qualms. She's like, oh no, I'm just going to tell her. And she really, really, like, just believe, she had no problem with it.
Yeah.
I think if you're that way, then you are just, I just don't have any respect for you.
Yep.
No moral compass,
Mm-hmm.
And so, and I mean, I understand they're kids too, and kids lie. Not
Right.
Lewis.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, Lewis did hide stuff though. Like, remember, he hid things.
Yeah, for more fun. He wasn't doing it out of any genuine malice. This is
No.
delicious, what this little girl is doing.
Mm-hmm.
She's wielding power over one of her classmates, and she's enjoying doing it to the point where now she's like, oh, I can get quarters and I can get free pretzels, and then he's not going to say anything, and she's learning that dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
At 6
And
years
Sweetie
old, 6
came
or
in.
7.
Sweetie came in and showed, and she knew she. See,
Mm-hmm.
that's where she had no problem with, like manipulating Miss Houck, but now, and for my favorite part of this whole letter, when Miss Houck's like, oh, but she's from a good Christian family.
Yep.
And then Sweetie goes, well, and just leaves it hanging there.
Yep. Mic drop.
Master class. I love this woman so much. I love her. But this is see, and this happened. Some of this stuff, same stuff. I remember those kind of situations at school where there's, the teachers, the adults play favorites with the kids and then encourage behavior. What kind of person do you think Ruthie turned out to be?
Hopefully she learned from Sweetie and from other experiences that this type of behavior isn't to be tolerated. But who knows?
I don't have that much faith. But we know, see, here's the good part, is we know that Lewis turned out wonderful.
Oh yeah, he's always displayed all the qualities. When he was 6 in this letter is the exact same way. He actually formally retired this past week from real estate after 50 years of real estate. And just the stories that people were talking about. I mean, his best man from his wedding was there at the retirement party, And my dad's he's going to be 81 this year. So he's maintained that. And I know his parents would be so proud of him if they were able to be at the retirement party. But I don't think he's ever been fired from a job before. And so the joke was one of the other brokers at the office, because he worked in real estate, who's known him for years, who's now basically taking over and fully in the role, and would be considered one of his bosses. He started to unbutton his shirt, and underneath there was a t-shirt that said, "Lewis, you're fired." And it was it was such a great moment. I did catch it on film. And I'll show you the clip later, Jamie. But yeah, because he's just the honest guy. He's always been this way through everything, and it has proved him well in life. It never gets old. So yeah.
Oh, but she really laid into her. She really laid into her. And that's the other thing is, Sweetie has the capability of self-reflection. And so if she flaws, and she knows she does, she accepts that. She accepts that, folds that in, and that, that the ability to do that, to take personal responsibility. If you're unable to take personal responsibility for yourself, and this is something as libertarians as well.
Yep.
You got to be able to take personal responsibility and accountability. And if you can't do that, then your character suffers. Your reputation suffers. This Miss Houck I don't think she was used to having people question her. And I don't believe, labor theory of value. Just because you've worked a job for 30 some years doesn't mean you're good at it. In fact, the worst teacher I ever had was one of the oldest teachers I ever had. So, she got stuck in her ways, and she's like, no, I'm going to go ahead and pass judgment. Ruthie comes from a good Christian family, so she obviously didn't take crayons from him.
Right.
Well, first of all, let's talk about how she's just dumped him in there and didn't say, do you want them?
Right. Just the attitude, the behavior of just that. What are you doing?
But Miss Houck, she's like, oh, well, I've done this for so long. I'm just going to go ahead and just give. How could you look at Lewis and how could you be around him for any given amount of time and not see how wonderful he was?
Right. Unless
You
you're
know.
just kind of going about, day to day and just going through the motions for having been in a job for a very, very long time. I think we do get to the retirement of Mrs. Houck. So she's really close to retirement. It's within like a year or two of this letter. So she's really at the end of her career and she's just like, okay, I've got the first grade kids. Mm-hmm. Like there's a lot of going on, which is ironically what Sweetie and Lou are doing with Miss Darst, is the thing.
Mm-hmm,
But
mm-hmm.
in this case, absolutely not from Sweetie. And yeah.
So yeah, this again, I love hearing stories about Mrs. Houck. She's great. Just reaffirm my decision to
I keep looking for a picture of her. I'm hoping that I can find a good picture of Mrs. Houck.
Well, can you tell me what is your dad's how does he feel about Mrs. Houck now, today?
To this day, he does remember Mrs. Houck, and she was one of his most disliked teachers that he ever had. He does not remember her fondly. And when I mentioned, do you remember this teacher, Mrs. Houck? The expression over his face, early childhood memories is just like, like, no.
That was the end of that letter.
We do have a couple treats here, so we'll comment after the first one. But Sweetie did to this document append a couple of poems. And by the way, when she says this is going to some of you, somehow I got the sense that Florence's carbon got jerked, that Florence didn't get this one. I'm just saying. We know Jean did, but Jean had written, and she said, I'm going to send it to some of you. So we'll start with the first poem, and then there's a second one we'll close the episode with. But here's the first poem from Sweetie.
It's strange how thoughts can take you back, in daydreams reminisce. Of all the memories I recall, my favorite one is this. To think back to those times gone by, whence time has quickly flown, all through the days I was a child, till now when I am grown. And as each picture flashes by, as each memory's tales were told, I see my mother in each one, and I'm blessed through times untold. I feel her arms around me, as she held me on her knee, and the way she'd listen patiently to much new desperate plea. Even now my kids are taken sick, and I search for things to do. I think of things that Mama did, and I am charmed anew. I can't describe the comfort just the thought of her can bring, and often when I'm lonely, just her smile can make me grin. And if I stand before those gates and stopped to make my bid, St. Pete, I'll say I tried to do just half that Mama did.
Yeah.
So it's a sweet Mother's Day poem. That was very nice.
Mm-hmm. But before we finally close out the episode here, she writes 2 poems about Mother's Day. I think everybody could tell why this whole document seemed to be about the time period of late April of 52, because post-Easter holiday, Mrs. Houck is still the teacher, the measles is mentioned, so it's pretty clear. But this is also really early for Mother's Day poetry. Sweetie, because she's been so belated with everything, is probably getting it to family early just in case. And we just passed Mother's Day, so if people need good Mother's Day poetry, here you go, for future use. Jamie, I hope everybody tunes in next week as we get back to what Dit's up to before we go into this last poem. We'll close the episode with that. Dit's an interesting person, and poor G-Mom. That's all I'm going to say. Speaking of Mother's Day, poor G-Mom. So, and here's the end.
And a happy Mother's Day to you, too. You rouse with the feeling that something is surely though softly amiss. You're puzzled for some explanation, but are you quite prepared to face this? Sister cooks the breakfast, and when Father carts it in, you know before they reach the door that the toast is black as sin. The eggs are cold, the juice is warm, the coffee too, you'll see, is not quite what the ads proclaim, will tease your taste in glee. And doesn't Junior follow with, what's that in his fist? But those early blooming flowers, that you thought sure he'd missed. But see those smiling faces? How could you spoil their plan? So you gulp down all the tasteless food and thank them to a man. You may as well resign your fate and be queen this Mother's Day, even though tomorrow you'll have to pay and pay and pay.